Welcome back to another Bible reading and discussion.
Getting in them missionary journeys.
Yeah, we are in the middle of the missionary journeys. We are in Acts chapter 14. Got 28 verses. And who read first last time?
I did.
You did, so it's my turn. Okay, so I'll read about 14 verses, kind of how we do it. We split it up. But once again, we're just reading, discussing.
Giving you a chance to kind of look at it, put some thoughts in your head for further study.
Yeah, and remember, if you ever have questions,
ask us, please.
Ask.
We love questions,
We
don't
do.
we? Yes, we do.
And we're planning for this to probably be the last Bible reading and discussion for this week. We did 3.
However,
Thursday, we are looking towards a podcast on the next chosen episode. I think we are on 6 now, or 7?
yes, I think it's 6.
6 or 7. So, all right. So now at Iconium, they entered together in the Jewish synagogue and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks believed. So you're going to start seeing that subtle shift. Jews, then Jews and some Greeks, Jews and Greeks. To a majority, you're going to see a lot more Greeks.
Yeah,
come
we're
out of
always
this.
just got to explain what's going on because the Jews are kind of receding back and
Yeah.
Gentiles are overwhelmingly taking over.
Yep. But the unbelieving Jews, and this is probably part of the problem, stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against their brothers. So they remained for a long time speaking boldly for the Lord, who bore witness to the word of his grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. I love how they're never deterred by the poisoning of the minds, or the whatever they may say.
Hey, it's kind of like a variety of that seems to happen most of the time. They'll stir this people up, that people up, something. And that's how people do when they don't have anything better to do, like answer your arguments and win.
Yeah.
They stir people up.
And as we discovered in the Gospel of John, you see that splitting of those who believe and those who don't believe. They're seeing the same signs. They're hearing the same teachings. It comes down to a matter of whether you're willing to accept or whether you're willing to follow, because some people accept it but don't want that life.
Yeah,
they
that's
understand it.
fairly demanding.
Yeah. So, but the people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews, some sided with the apostles. When an attempt was made by both Gentile and Jews with their rulers to mistreat them and to stone them.
That's pretty big mistreatment there.
Yep, they learned of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the surrounding country. And there they continued to preach the gospel. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of a hint, just because Jesus says you will be persecuted for the sake of my kingdom, doesn't mean you have to stand around and allow persecution to happen to you. Meaning, if there's a chance, you preached, you were there, you find out they're going to kill you, it's okay to go, you know what, I might go to the next city.
I like that choice, yes.
Now, sometimes Paul, knowing, he will stand up and do what he needs to do. So it's wisdom.
That's it. What's best?
Now at Lystra, there was a man sitting who could not use his feet. He was crippled from birth and never walked. So we got another lame man. He listened to Paul speaking, and Paul looked intently at him, seeing that he had faith to be made well. And I love that because, you can almost tell when somebody who is getting it, was there an expression on his face? Was there a tear running down his eyes?
He's engaging.
And this man is not initiating the healing. This man is initiating his faith and listening. And it's almost as if his disability is not the main concern as his sin and Jesus coming and saving him from his sin.
His healing isn't what he's most concerned with at this point. He's hearing about Jesus and forgiveness.
And so God every now and then throws an extra bone out there, and that's what he does. Through Paul, and in a loud voice, stand upright on your feet. And he sprang up and began walking. And when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in Lycaonian, the gods have come down to us in the likeness of men. Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was a chief speaker. Now, interestingly enough, there is a story that they believed both Zeus and Hermes had come in the past, and he had been this kind of they came in the night, and all the people rejected him, all the houses rejected, and then one house accepted. And there was like a tree, I think, that was ended up planting. They thought there's a whole interesting story of why they thought these two specific
They're
gods.
back.
It's because they have a myth that they had visited their city before.
It's interesting, too, that Barnabas gets to be Zeus, who's the chief.
Yeah.
And the spokesman, Hermes, which is Mercury, and six one half a dozen the other, is Paul.
He's probably doing majority of the speaking. And Barnabas may be doing a lot of what he has been doing in the past, is encouraging, and because people are still, hey, this is Saul.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let me tell you, that still could be going on. And so Barnabas may be kind of directing people's faith. Paul may be the one who's preaching, Barnabas the encourager. They're just...
And there's even today, if you and I are speaking, it can be people out in the audience that get with folks and follow up and follow through, their friends, their family, this and that. So that still can be a very valuable thing.
Absolutely. And the priests of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance of the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their garments, rushed out in the crowd, crying out. And that's where I turned it over.
They're just not going to have any of this, are they? No. It's saying, men, why are you doing these things? We are also men. Kind of reminds us of Simon Peter, similarly. We are also men of the same nature as you, and preach the gospel to you, that you should turn from these vain things to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. And the generations gone, but he permitted all nations to go their own ways, and yet he did not leave himself without witness, in that he did good, gave you rains from heaven, fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. Even saying these things with difficulty, they restrained the crowds from offering a sacrifice to them. People do kind of what they emotionally set their minds on doing.
See, and here's the big difference between what Paul, Barnabas, and Peter are doing versus Jesus. Doing a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same teaching. Jesus accepted worship. These guys,
these are just representing Jesus.
They're just representing.
We're not going to have this. It's interesting, too, in the midst of all this, wanting to offer sacrifices for them and everything like that, they're coming out saying, idolatry is silly, don't do it.
That's a part of the message.
But the Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and having won over the crowds, they stoned Paul, dragged him out of the city, supposing him to be dead. But while the disciples stood around him, he got up and entered the city. The next day, he went away with Barnabas to Derbe. Very interesting thing. A lot of people think that maybe this is when he went to the third heaven and that. I don't know. But he got awful close to being killed. But I believe he didn't, because he's on a mission from God, and God's going to keep him.
And interestingly enough, when he's going to come back through this region again, and he's going to pick up Timothy. And I just can't help but put these two pieces together that Timothy saw. This great display of faith. He wasn't ready yet to maybe go with Paul.
Right.
But when Paul comes back around, he starts hearing of Timothy.
Let's do this,
And so whatever Paul's doing here has prompted Timothy to become a little more vocal. People liked him. He had favor with all the people. And then Paul says, you know what, you're coming with me.
And that's a lot of how Christianity and discipleship work. We find people where they are, but they can go further. Farther along, it may be the time for them to do whatever, but a lot of people are a work in progress.
And sometimes it's just giving people the seed of, you know what, one day, you may not be there now, but one day I see eldership material, I see deacon material, I see Bible class material, I see great preacher. Gary Hampton actually used to make a habit of that. And I remember when I was probably 11 years old, he came up to Jamestown where I grew up, and I remember him taking us out, he goes, you're going to be a preacher one day.
And so it was.
And I never had thought about it, and I kind of dismissed it. And I'm not saying that's the reason I became.
But it was a contributing factor.
But he always took the time. It's one of the things I appreciated about him was when kids were around, he got down on the level and he gave them a little, you know what, you're going to be something great for God. You don't have to be a preacher to be great for God, but he just...
We need to do that in our churches. Prepare people. Everybody's not supposed to be an elder. Everybody's not supposed to be a preacher, but some people are. And if you don't, there's other good things to do that are very needed. If there's just a pulpit and just elders, nothing's much going to get done.
No, we're useless without the rest of the body.
After they preached the gospel to that city and made many disciples, they returned to Lystra and to Iconium and to Antioch, strengthening the souls of disciples, encouraging them to continue in the faith, and saying, through many tribulations, we must enter the kingdom of God. We're really blessed. We grouse and complain sometimes about stuff that these people would have enjoyed having our situation. We need to maximize our opportunities and our privileges for the kingdom instead of whining.
Our persecution is someone said something mean about us on Facebook. Who cares? Get over Facebook.
I think it's interesting too when Paul, back a little bit, when Paul got up, what did he do? Goes back in the city.
He doesn't always do that. That's the thing.
No, he doesn't always do that.
Earlier, he's leaving.
Off.
But at this moment, he felt it necessary to go back into danger because he has unfinished.
Tie up some loose ends.
And more believers come out of it.
Yes, they do. And so the elders, when they had appointed elders for them in every church, so they're re-going, plowing the ground again that they have originally, and they're appointing elders. And they can do this as rapidly as they do because they've got Jews and God-fearers that were converted, and they were steeped in the knowledge of the Old Testament.
And not just knowledge. Like when you hear God-fearers, you're looking at Cornelius. These are people who already had a devout prayer life, had a devout life to God. God was accepting of a lot of their prayers. I mean, they were already very spiritual. They weren't novices.
Yeah, they weren't just, passing the Bible Bowl test or anything. It had changed them fundamentally, and that's what the Word is supposed to do.
Yeah.
When they had appointed for elders for them in every church, they prayed with fasting, commended them to the Lord whom they had believed. They passed through Pisidia into Pamphylia. When they had spoken the word in Perga, they went down to Italia, and from there they sailed to Antioch. These guys are going everywhere, from which they had been commended to the grace of God for the work that they had accomplished. So they're kind of going back to the folks that commissioned them and kind of check back in and report on what's going on. When they had arrived and gathered the church together, they began to report all the things that God had done with them and how he had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. And they spent a long time with the disciples.
And I love, we can look at and say Paul and his determination is the reason for these converted souls. But if you were to ask Paul, he would say it was God.
I am what I am by the grace of God, he would say.
It's not that God didn't use Paul. Right. It's that Paul realized without God using him, this wouldn't have happened.
If there's not a user, forget about it.
So if you go back to his source, God is the one who adds the souls.
To God be the glory.
To God be the glory. So we're right in the midst, and this stirring and this division that is happening is going to cause even some division that come into the church where they're going to start, okay, these Jewish ideals, how far should we go with them?
And there's going to be a level of compromise, but it's not that, you got to be a Jew first. And we need to think about when we're dealing with different cultures or even in our country there's different situations, how much is a legitimate, useful, constructive concession, and how much takes us the other way. Yeah,
that's like when you go over to other countries. I remember talking to one of my friends who's over in the Philippines, a friend of ours, and he made the point. He goes, we don't really like a lot of American missionaries coming for a week or two or whatever. He says because what they try to do is a lot of times they try to Americanize. The church over here looks a certain way, and if it didn't look a way, it'd look weird over here, but over there it looks, what we do is strange to them.
Well, yeah, it is. It ought to be stranger to us than it is, but in New Zealand, this goes back a long time ago, there was a missionary who went to the local school and asked if they would fly the American flag on July the 4th. Needless to say,
I hope it didn't happen.
It did not happen. One of their big things is Guy Fawkes Day over in New Zealand. If one of them were to come to Eton Elementary and say, hey, will you guys fly the New Zealand flag today? I don't think so.
No.
And it wouldn't really be appreciated.
No. So, all right, well, there's Acts chapter 14. Once again, we hope that you enjoyed this. We enjoy doing it.
Yes, we do.
And so we hope that you give us the heart button, comment, share, all that kind of stuff. Get this out. And hopefully by word of mouth is best. Be talking about this.
Yeah, I've been listening to this. It's helped me with my Bible study and whatever.
That's always a great, I like to listen to a lot of stuff. And it's funny when you're in conversation with people, like, yeah, I've been listening to this. How about you give a listen to that? That's as easy as it can be, if that's what you're looking to use this for.
And people who are interested in those things tend to start sharing things that have meant something to them.
Yeah, and listen to what they have too.
Yeah.
Have it an open kind of dialogue. But anyway, we hope that you have a great day today. We love you. God bless.
Bye.